Hi, good morning everyone. I'm Nidhi Goyal and thank you so much for having me through a video at this fantastic festival. Many apologies for not being able to join you in person. So, I thought I would begin with a little incident that I remembered. 8 years ago when I started my work on disability and sexuality, I still remember that a friend of mine who's also disabled called me up and said, listen Nidhi, the word's gone around. And I said, what word has gone around? He said, the word has gone around that Nidhi Goyal only knows to talk about sex. I got really offended as a young, single, disabled woman trying to work on sexuality issues. It was really offensive how society could gossip. And I said, what do you mean by Nidhi Goyal only knows to talk about sex? What about doing it? And I think the thought process continued from there, and I understood that some voices are just not accepted. Some voices are accepted, but maybe not in some spaces like sexuality. What is a woman with a disability doing talking about sexuality? And that I could connect with today's topic of power and protest. When I look at power and protest, I could look at it from three lenses: as a disabled woman, as an activist working on disability rights and gender justice, as a stand-up comedian talking about issues of disability, gender and sexuality. And I often wonder, how could these three identities be threaded together to reflect or to talk about power and protest? It's through voice. Voice is key. As a woman, are you allowed, quote unquote, to be loud and inappropriate, quote unquote again? As a person with a disability, is your voice suppressed? And are the other noises around you, the ableist noises, really strong? As a woman with a disability, where is the space where you can express? It is all about building a voice, expressing it, and then amplifying those voices. With this idea in mind, and with an unparalleled, unflinching support, a very enabling environment, very privileged that way, I started work on disability and sexuality, and I thought, oh my God, I'm this very empowered young woman, and I will be working on sexual rights of persons with disabilities, focused on women and girls with disabilities. It would be fantastic because I really haven't internalized any kind of stigma, and I'm working with a lot of women who have. And I looked around and I suddenly started writing, for researching and writing this website, Sexuality and Disability, and suddenly when I reached the section of relationships, I sat back and I said, hell yes, I have internalized stigma too. Because I am a strong believer and a watcher of Bollywood, or I was. And I used to watch all these popular media stories, cinema stories of disabled women being this burden to society, being actually not equal in a relationship, where the partners were deified. And I had thought that, oh my God, somebody would really have to sacrifice or be this over-loving person who would want to be with me. And that shifted while engaging with online media and while writing that website. Now for me, sexuality was important because again, this was a space where the voice wasn't accepted, where people actually thought, sexuality isn't important for you, for people with disabilities, and definitely not for women with disabilities, because women in general are not supposed to be talking about sexuality issues. So for me, sexuality is about self, right? And when I conduct workshops using different art forms, using different images, colors, role plays, etc., different art methods, it came out that when I asked a woman with a disability, what is your dream? And she said, I do not have a dream. And she again referred to a film that she had seen where dreams weren't really allowed for women and girls with disabilities, and her environment was shaped accordingly. And I went to this meet where a young non-disabled mother said, my disabled daughter is asking me when I read her fairy tales, saying, Mama, none of these women in the fairy tales are like me, so will I never find my prince? Will I never be living happily ever after? And that's when, at Rising Flame, the NGO that I founded and I'm the director, then we decided to retell these popular stories, to reclaim these spaces, to bring our voices out in the public through art. And we started a campaign called My Tale Too, where women with disabilities came together and rewrote the stories. So where now Red Riding Hood has a little limp and a walking stick, where Beauty and the Beast is about a woman in coma and how traumatized her family is, where Rapunzel is about disability or blindness becoming a witch in someone's life. And this was a very empowering process and a way and a tool to create voices of girls and women with disabilities through art. Coming back to sexuality, these stereotypes and stigmas, and people always say that sexuality is a very personal issue, is a big taboo in this part of the world, in South Asia particularly. And people often said, why do you want to work on it? Why do you want to talk about something so personal? And I said, yeah, it's personal, but when it comes to people with disabilities, nobody lets it be personal. It's all about what society believes. So society believes you're asexual, you're hypersexual, and so they will call you that. Society believes that they have the right to know how would you do it. I promise, it's the truth. A blind friend of mine with his blind wife was sitting on a beach and two people walking nearby were talking about them very intrusively. And one said to the other, the two people walking were conversing, and one said to the other saying, he's blind, she's blind. I wonder how would he know where to put? My friend told me this and I paused and I said, oh, that means that every sighted person or every sighted man has a little torch clipped to his penis. Or the tech-savvy ones simply use Google Maps. That was to make a joke out of a very serious issue, an issue that had traumatized my friend. But the joke was made and is presented as a part of my comedy gig, is to make people reflect on the ridiculous assumptions that they make, on the stereotype that they behold, on the stigma that they perpetuate through their actions, words, and behavior. When, as a stand-up comedian, I stand on stage, being a disabled woman, talking about sexuality, gender, all of these issues, I remember my first gig at a comedy club and people were silent. They were shocked. And I think the three reactions that went through them were, she's single, she's a woman, she's disabled, what is she doing here? The second reaction was, oh, she's blind, but then, aren't these guys really depressed and suicidal? And the third reaction is, but you're supposed to be inspiring, why would we even laugh at what you say? And that is when I think I understand even more the importance of art, the importance of having a voice through art, where the onus still falls on me as a comedian to make people comfortable, as in life, where the onus is always on people with disabilities, to create awareness, to make others comfortable, to prove that they are human beings too. And that is why I say that art and activism coming together, bringing out a voice, are the way to protest against the power structures that exist. And I often say, through the title of my comedy gig, can you see me now? It's not about me seeing you or not as a blind woman, but can you see me now? Thank you.